Hi, my name's Hamish Ford and I'm going to be lecturing next week on the topic of shop. So this is a couple of brief videos to introduce some of the key concepts for next week's lecture. So today I'm going to take you through in this video a couple of definitions, so defining consumption and defining taste. And then we'll look a little bit at meaning, work and leisure and the notion of shopping for identity. And these concepts will be expanded on significantly in the lecture itself. So defining consumption, first of all, in the field of economics, this phrase is used to refer to the direct utilisation of goods and services by the consumer within capitalist societies like our own, and is also seen as closely bound to the production and exchange of commodities. So you might be thinking straight away, what's that got to do with film, media and cultural studies? Hopefully that will become clear in a moment. So the birth of consumption is generally associated with the rise of industrial capitalism in the 18th century, but consumer culture as we know it really is a fundamentally 20th and 21st century phenomenon. I'll go much more into why that might be in the lecture. So today consumption permeates all aspects of life in developed societies, recognised as one of the principal resources for identity construction. So this is much more where the humanities and film, media and cultural studies interest comes in. And a phrase that you might like to kind of consider here is "we are what we consume" as a mantra or a way to try and understand this topic. So the focus on consumption within the fields of film, media and cultural studies initially derived from interest in the ways in which audiences consume texts. A commodity culture is a culture in which people understand themselves and the world they live in principally through their relationship through commodities, and where the desire for those commodities is experienced as one that can never fully be satisfied. So it's not just a question of consuming something that you may need to live, like food or drink. It's something which is much more difficult to actually finally achieve satisfaction for, and so the famous Rolling Stones song "I Can't Get No Satisfaction" is sometimes thrown around as a real summary of this kind of problem or situation. So defining taste, a very closely related concept for our concerns. What is taste? Well, it's a person's aesthetic lifestyle choice or choices, often expressed through their consumption practices. So taste is not an innate quality in a person. It's not like somebody has good taste or bad taste just, as a result of their inherent being. Individual taste, what we think of as our personal choices and preferences, is socially organised. So a result of our background, our social situation, and so forth. So culture, therefore, is a form of capital which social agents both attempt, that's human beings, both attempt to accumulate and cultivate and use to distinguish themselves or ourselves from other social groups via classificatory struggles. So that sounds a bit complicated, but think about the ways in which you, as a member of a particular culture or subculture, like to differentiate yourself from others. So particularly if you're a member of, say, a certain fan community or something like that. And again, I'll explore that much more in the lecture. Finally, in this first video, part 3, meaning, work and leisure, the notion of shopping for identity. So if consumerism is a key driver of identity in modern capitalist societies like Australia, and of course a great many others, giving us pleasure and anxiety, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? On the one hand, we love consumption. On the other hand, we're often concurrently concerned by it, the extent to which it dominates our lives. And a very famous movie from Hollywood quite some time ago now, Fight Club, expressed in a much discussed way this tension between the desire and the anxiety of consumption. What does it mean to have what we buy as a key indicator of who we are? Are we comfortable with that idea? Consumption as a prime mover of identity, therefore, more than production. So what that means is your identity is much more increasingly reflected through what you buy and consume than what you do for a job. Who or what gives us this identity? So what institutions or bodies or people are literally kind of handing that identity to us, or different facets thereof? And who's ultimately in charge of this process? If there is anybody at all. And again, Fight Club is a very famous kind of riffing on this idea. So no matter what kind of scholarly answers to these questions that different theorists and critics have come up with, shopping then as a kind of catch-all phrase, which is why this week is called Shop, is crucial to 20th and 21st century understandings of culture and identity, a kind of primary text of our experience and daily negotiation of reality. And in part 2 of this video, I'll explore a bit more what that might mean in terms of shopping being a text. Gender is often crucial here, as Fight Club suggests, with its very kind of masculine rejection or attempted rejection of this consumer lifestyle. And the consumer lifestyle in that film, perhaps problematically, is often associated with femininity. If we go back to the 19th century, the development of the department store as a public space where women could visit safely and where they tried on different identities is often perhaps, and often identities perhaps slightly outside their class role as designated by family background, was something kind of liberating and experimental almost, and it certainly was a rare chance for women to enter the public sphere in many respects. But it also, of course, began this association very much between consumption and women, or femininity, that we can perhaps see in part still today, although that's a really interesting topic of discussion. So the department store predates the supermarket, that I'll also talk about a little bit, and perhaps makes more obvious the importance of identity for sale. So to conclude, that the advent of every kind of shopping since the 19th century and subsequently, has been seen by some as a continuation of the idea of shopping for identity, or an exaggeration in some respects of that idea. Essentially whereby subject-driven popular culture, so our subjective pleasures, etc., and about the satisfaction of the individual on some levels at least, is generated against the conservative dictates of other pre-modern institutions. So again, think of women in the 19th century department store who were able to sort of experience a little bit more freedom than their usual domestic roles, perhaps. In this sense, capitalism is sometimes seen as an experience through shopping and consumption that can be read as kind of liberating, a kind of self-construction and experimentation that flies in the face of lingering moral dictates when it comes to identity, things like religion, family roles, gender roles, etc., etc. In the next video, I'm going to explore 2 radically different approaches to this question. So I shall see you soon. Thanks for listening.